First a new GM and now a new head coach. The Blue Jackets' busy off-season continues. We're talking about Vincent's firing on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. I also have to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. So, Blue Jackets did the thing. My streak of being asleep or on a plane when news breaks continues. Took a nap yesterday, woke up. 3 minutes previously, they had fired Pascal Vincent, excuse me. I am not unsurprised by this. The timing surprises me. I thought that we wouldn't get a decision about this until after the draft or free agency, but I guess Don Waddell has a vision, and the vision does not include Pascal Vincent. So this is, I think, I don't think this is a good thing for the Blue Jackets. I think Vincent did a lot of damage last year. That some of it was his fault, some of it was self-inflicted, and some of it was just kind of poor circumstances for him. Like, he never really got a chance to find his feet, and then in trying to find his feet, he did just kind of make things worse, you know. So we'll talk about that in a little bit, but I am, like I said, I'm surprised that it was now. I am not surprised that he's gone. I put it at, like 50-50 that he was going to be in Columbus in October or not. We'll see what happens next. I think the assistants might switch up. Mark Recchi might get to stay. Steve McCarthy, I think, is probably gone, but I could be wrong about that. This is just kind of, it needed to happen, and like, it kind of sucks because, by all accounts, Pascal Vincent, great guy, has a lot of smart things to say about coaching, but at the end of the day, did not practice what he preached, and that's kind of it. He talked a big game about accountability and about respecting players and about, not being the tough guy. And unfortunately, he kind of missed on all three counts. And I think, again, partially this is but partially it's his fault, partially it's management's fault. Like I said, he got the job 4 days before training camp started because the Blue Jackets decided to hire Mike Babcock, and then literally 3 months later, he ended up resigning because he was up to his old tricks again. Vincent gets the job. Weirdly, the Blue Jackets kind of made an unforced error with Vincent because they gave him, I believe, a 2-year contract on basically on the back of nothing. He was hired as kind of a last resort, and then they decided to give him a 2 or maybe even 3-year contract, which surprised me in many ways. Lots of question marks about that summer, as a whole, but specifically in terms of the coaching decisions. And now they're going to be paying 2 head coaches this season after doing that last season. I think actually they played 3 head coaches last season. So I guess that the Brad Larsen's contract has ceased, but what a mess. And it could have been very easily avoided for a bunch of different reasons, you know? They could have not hired Mike Babcock in the first place. They could have done, they could have made Vincent the interim head coach and, made sure that he was ready for the role before handing him a multi-year contract or, hiring him as the full-time head coach, full stop. Because I think part of the reason was, yeah, he wasn't ready. Um, didn't really ever have time to get ready. But also that was, I don't know, like, I get after the Brad Larson experiment, handing a multi-year contract to another first-time NHL head coach was, again, just an unforced error. It is what it is. It kinda sucks, but here we are. I have some questions again about the timing. I have some questions about what comes next. But Pascal Vincent's tenure in Columbus, I think, is very little of it has been his fault, but it sucks that it's ending on kind of this note. The new boss comes in and immediately, or not immediately, decides that, hey, you're a great guy, but you're not the coach that we need right now. Vincent will be back in the NHL, I am sure. Um, I don't know where he'll land. I assume he'll go to assistant coach somewhere first, and then potentially make the step up again. But as of right now, Blue Jackets are on the hunt again for more personnel, and I want to talk about that in just a little bit here on Locked On Blue Jackets as we kind of look at some potential options for the Blue Jackets for their new head coach. It's coming up next here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I've got to tell you about Game Time. The Stanley Cup final game might be tonight, which is exciting. And if you don't have tickets for that yet, but you want them, you can get them on Game Time. And here's the cool thing: prices on the Game Time app go down the closer it gets to puck drop. So hey, shoot your shot, try your best. They've got killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, a lowest price guarantee, which means if you find tickets in the same section and row for less somewhere else, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference, and they're taking the guesswork out of buying tickets. Like I said, the low price guarantee is one of my favorite things. They've got all in pricing, which means that you can toggle a little switch, and there's no surprise fees at checkout, unlike certain other ticketing services, which will remain nameless. And they've got the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We're talking about Pascal Vincent being out and question mark being in. So the hunt begins. I can't imagine that they're going for an internal hire here. Neither of the head coaches, neither of the assistant coaches are suitable for stepping up, in my opinion. We'll talk about Trent Vogelhuber as a potential option in a minute here, but it's going to be an external hire. And I think it's going to be an external hire for a bunch of reasons. Number one, they've done the internal promotion twice now. Didn't work out either time. Vincent, not great. Larson, not great. Vincent, not his fault, but still not great. I'm curious to see who Don Waddell likes for the job. He's been around for a while. He knows a bunch of people. The trouble now is, and this is kind of why the timing surprised me, is the coaching carousel has kind of stopped for now. A lot of the coaches that were fired last season now have new jobs somewhere else. And if you're going for, a coach with NHL experience, there's not a ton out there in terms of like guys that have not been hired somewhere else already. And like you could get an assistant from somewhere and bring him up, but That seems, I don't know. We'll see how that goes. One option that has kind of been talked about basically since he got fired is Todd McClellan, who coached the Kings for a few years and did a really good job developing the young players on that team. I think his fatal flaw, so to speak, was he couldn't get it done in the playoffs. He couldn't adjust. He got outcoached by the Oilers 2 years in a row, which is very funny. And yeah, like he couldn't adjust. The Oilers changed things up, and he didn't, and he just kind of kept doing what he was doing, and it didn't work. And that happened 2 years in a row. He got canned. I do still like. I don't hate this. I wouldn't hate this as a potential hiring for the Blue Jackets. I think like I said, I think he did a really great job developing the youth in LA, which is always a good thing. And he's got experience, and I think the Blue Jackets are going to go after someone with experience. Um, and I don't necessarily think they're going with I don't think they need to go with a coach that does know how to win in the playoffs. It would be a nice option, obviously, but baby steps, And I guess the question kind of comes down to: are they looking for a long term coach, or are they looking for a stopgap until the guy that they actually want is available, or until someone like Trent Vogelhuber is ready to step up? Todd McClellan, I think, is a short term coach, which is not a bad thing. But is that what Columbus wants? We'll find out, I guess, in the next kind of few weeks. Although since Kekalainen got fired, the leaks out of Columbus have been zero. So, like, I guess we know who was leaking everything to the media. But Tom McClellan was kind of my first, like, my immediate first thought was, oh, he doesn't have another job yet. The other guy that I believe is still a free agent, let's say, is Jay Woodcroft of the Oilers. He is, I believe he has a new job, but he is not he's not coaching in the NHL. He is coaching Canada for the World Championships. Oh, he was coaching Canada. I guess that's already happened. Um, we'll uh, we'll see. Like I said, he's currently unemployed / free agent / looking for work. I would prefer if the choices come down to the two of these guys, so Woodcroft and McClellan. Like, I think I'd take McClellan over Woodcroft, but I think Woodcroft deserved a lot of the credit for kind of picking the Oilers up out of the mess that they were in a couple of seasons ago. Obviously, they struggled out of the gate this season, and he ended up getting fired. Chris Knobloch stepped in and has done pretty good things for them. But Jay Woodcroft's a really interesting option. Again, I know it's easy to say that there's a good coach there when you're coaching two of the best players in the world, But I again, I wouldn't hate it. There's none of the options that I'm like super enthusiastic. Like, yes, please hire this guy immediately. Um, but there's some options there where I'm like, okay, don't hate this, don't hate that. Would be okay with it, and maybe I'll get more enthusiastic about some of these guys kind of as time goes on. But those are kind of the two main guys that have NHL, like a significant amount of NHL experience. And that's kind of where I think they're going to land. There are options for if they want someone like if Don Waddell has a guy that he likes that isn't necessarily an NHL head coach already or hasn't been an NHL head coach already. Like, there are some options there. The AHL has a handful of options, and one would be Seth Appert, who is unfortunately out of the running. Actually, he was a guy that I immediately thought of, and then realized that he's gone to Buffalo. He's an assistant coach there, so like there is still the option that he could get poached away from that organization. But I am not looking at him as someone who is available right now. Todd Nelson of the Hershey Bears immediately gets put in the conversation. He's done incredible things with the Bears these past few seasons. Led them to the second best point percentage in AHL history this season. Blue Jacket fans, if you watched the Monsters play in the playoffs, you saw Todd Nelson at work there as with the Hershey Bears. Has briefly been in the NHL, was I think 2014, 2015. He was with the Oilers when they didn't have literally anyone on the roster. So I'm not, and then that was almost 10 years ago now. So I don't know how relevant that experience is on the old resume, but he's a guy that I think is definitely he's probably going to get at least a phone call. Another guy I like is Marco Sturm. He's been coaching the Ontario Reign for a couple of seasons. Again, really solid at developing the young players on that team. Having interviewed him a couple of times, says all the right things. Again a kind of an off the beaten track option. I think he was in conversations for the Sharks head coach role, and obviously didn't get the job, but he's again another guy that I could see them giving a courtesy phone call to, just to say, hey, are you interested? Do you want to interview? And then take it from there. But so those are kind of the guys from the AHL. One option that I literally just thought of right now as I was recording this, Bradshaw is still with Tortorella in Philadelphia. Could he be an option for head coach in Columbus? He has basically, wherever he's gone, I think has been kind of an unsung hero. The Blue Jackets desperately need help with the defense in terms of coaching and on the penalty kill. Bradshaw was responsible for that, and their best defensive efforts came when he was behind the bench. Their best penalty kill came when he was behind the bench. Like, I think, again, you wouldn't be doing your job if you did not at least give him a courtesy call. But I don't know if he wants an NHL head coach role, or whether he's happy kind of working underneath Tortorella in Philadelphia. But again, that's a guy that I look at and I'm like, okay, he should definitely be in the conversation. Doesn't have NHL head coach experience, I believe, but, and maybe this is, kind of revisionist history a little bit, but I do think that they let the wrong Brad leave back in, what was it, 2021? So it'd be cool to see Bradshaw back. Because I always liked him. I thought he was a good coach, and he's definitely an option. Again, these are all just kind of guys that, like, after hearing the news yesterday, kind of was like, right, okay, who the heck is even available now? Because Keefe is hired, Berube is hired, basically everyone in the coaching carousel from last season is employed. So we'll see. Lots of options. I'm sure that more options or fewer options will be added as time goes by, and it either gets narrowed down or more guys interview for the position. It's literally, not even 24 hours since Vincent was fired. So we'll keep you all updated on all of that. We're going to take a quick break, and then I want to finish off by just kind of looking a little bit more at Vincent's season with the Blue Jackets, where he went wrong, where he went right, how much of it was his fault, and how much of it was just wrong guy, wrong time, so to speak. So we're going to talk about that in just a second here at Locked On Blue Jackets. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We're talking all about Pascal Vincent. He is out. Someone else is in or will be in when they hire them. But I wanted to just kind of, and I did Pascal Vincent's kind of season review kind of immediately after the season finished. And we looked at, the good of his season, the bad of his season, the ugly of his season. But just to kind of condense all of that down, people, I think, are not going to look fondly on this season of coaching from Pascal Vincent. I think, like I talked about at the beginning, there was a lot of unforced errors. There was a lot of talk about, accountability and treating players the right way, and it didn't feel like there was accountability. Quite frankly, I think there was some players that got a really long leash. I think there was some players that got a really short leash. I think consistency in terms of both ice time and line mates for basically every player was egregiously bad. It was I've talked about this consistently as I've been doing kind of the season reviews for all of the players. Like none of them had consistent ice time, none of them had consistent line mates, and that's a problem for many reasons. Um, More so with the young players than the veterans, quite frankly. The veterans, they have been used to it, they can adjust. I think if you've got someone, in their first or second year, and Kent Johnson's a really great example of this, had a good rookie season um last season. This season struggled, couldn't ever really get it going, got healthy scratched or taken out of the lineup, I think 9 times. Got sent down to the AHL, and then finally, as he came back and was like really starting to pick things up, got injured, out for the season. And that's not Vincent's fault. The injury is not Vincent's fault, but sending him down to the AHL, I don't think was the right option. Giving him, random line mates every game and giving him, sometimes giving him 8 minutes of ice time, sometimes giving him 14 minutes of ice time. Like that, you need consistency when you're a young player in the NHL, and Vincent wasn't giving that to basically anyone. There was the decision to put Fantilli on the wing and Line at center that just kind of kept happening. And I guess with Line wanting to leave Columbus or wanting to go somewhere else, not wanting to leave Columbus, which again is an important distinction that I think people need to make. Um, Fantilli, I'm assuming, is going to be back at center. The next head coach needs to prioritize the youth and needs to prioritize development as opposed to winning in this season specifically. This is going to be a building season. I think winning is important. I think the team has to take steps from last season. But if you bring in a head coach right now for winning right now, which that's what they did with Mike Babcock, they brought in a coach with the expectation to win now, and it fell apart. And I think if they do that again, that's going to be a mistake. So if they could find someone kind of in the same place as Vincent, but not Vincent, and again, like I want to reiterate, he got the job 4 days before the training camp started. He didn't ever really have an option to put his own mark on this season. It was kind of, he was playing catch up all the time. He didn't get a chance to bring in his own assistants. He didn't really get a chance to prep for the season, and I think he was under a lot of pressure from upper management to be kind of a tougher head coach who was harder on the players, like they knew Babcock was going to be. Um, I think they brought in someone that they could influence into being kind of a hard ass. And I don't think that's naturally Vincent's temperament. And I think that kind of met in all of the wrong ways, in that he didn't really get to use the good parts of his game, and he wasn't equipped to take the good parts out of being, the tough love kind of head coach. And it really kind of met in the middle of getting kind of the worst of both worlds, which is unfortunate and frustrating and everything. And I think that's what makes this next hire really important. This is going to be the fourth head coach. If you count Mike Babcock, which I don't necessarily think that we should, this is going to be the fourth head coach that Johnny Gaudreau will have in Columbus, and he's been here for 2 seasons. So you need to get this one right, because if we're doing this whole song and dance again next season or in a season and a half or 2 seasons, like, ay, 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 what a mess. You need to get this hire right. And so I'm not expecting a quick hire. Um, and something that does kind of reassure me is, and I was talking to this about to someone yesterday. Don Waddell is really, really good at hiring the right people and making smart choices. He brought in Brindamore, he brought in Tulski, and his whole thing is, he wants to be a supervisor. He wants to manage. He doesn't want to do all of the work himself. He wants to kind of control everyone and kind of have that bird's eye view and be able to, offer advice and supervise, etc. Which is a really interesting way of running a team. I feel like a general manager does the role of the general manager right now, I feel like, is to kind of do everything assisted by his assistants, but it seems like Waddell kind of has a different philosophy, which is fun. But I have faith in him to kind of make the right hire, more so than I had faith in Kekalainen to make the right hire. So we'll see we'll see what names kind of come out in the media. We'll see what kind of conversations happen. But I am both tempering my expectations and quietly optimistic for this hire. This is Don Waddell's first big test as GM of the Blue Jackets, so we'll see what his grade is when all is said and done about the coaching hire. That's all I've got for today. Tomorrow, I've got Dina Weinheimer here to talk all about the Monsters, their future with the team. We'll talk a little bit about Trent Vogelhuber as a potential coaching option, and yeah, it's a good conversation. I enjoyed it. Hopefully you guys come and stick around for that. That's going to be tomorrow's episode. Thank you for listening to this episode, for making us your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms. We're over on YouTube and on SiriusXM. We are free and available on all podcast platforms. I've literally just said that. Locked On Blue Jackets is on Twitter at LO_Blue Jackets. I'm on Twitter at _ Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. If you want to email me, you can email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. Comments, questions, criticisms, anything like that, send them in. And thank you once again for listening. And until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.